I'm pleased to welcome Deb Fabritz, Joe Friesen, and Brooks Martin today from the Department of Financial Institutions, Division of Securities. So these are actually securities examiners and educators, and we're really privileged to have them join us today. Deb, you've been in this particular business, if you want to call it that, this profession for a long time. Why don't you go ahead and introduce your team and take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful summer day. I'm Deb Fabritz, the Director of Professional Registration and Compliance from the Division of Securities. And with me are two of our examiners. Joe works with me in registration and compliance, and Brooks is from our Enforcement Bureau. So Joe and I work with everyone who is registered in the securities industry. Brooks tends more to chase after the unregistered folks that unfortunately could be engaged in some type of scam. Is Joe still with us? He's not showing where I saw him before.
I'm here. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's touch briefly on what our division does. Our general mission is to protect investors, and we do this in a number of ways. Everybody who conducts securities business in Wisconsin must be registered. So that's the firms and the people. We go out and examine those folks to see if they're in compliance with our rules and regulations. Securities products must also be registered or have some type of exemption from registration. We do get complaints on a regular basis, and we look into those. Sometimes we get tips from other regulators, and we take enforcement action when needed. All of our enforcement orders are posted on our website, so if you're curious about that, you can take a look. We also have investor education resources on our website. We're going to send Mike a set of the slides after this presentation, so to the extent we refer you to various resources, don't feel that you have to write them down. You'll get this later. Today, we're going to talk about a number of things. We've got kind of a lot to get into a short amount of time. We'll do our best and have some time at the end for questions. We're going to talk first about types of financial professionals, how to check them out, and then some of the red flags that you can keep an eye out for, some of our hot topics, things that have been going on in the enforcement world. That will be Brooks, and of course we have a number of resources. So I took from some firm documents different titles that people were able to use at those particular firms. And as you can see, titles sort of range all over the place. And they don't necessarily tell you anything about that person's qualifications or whether they are registered to either offer securities or give investment advice. Sometimes personal bankers and insurance folks use titles that make it sound like they could help you with all kinds of things, but in reality, they might be more limited. So most of these titles don't have any regulatory meaning at all. Can anyone pick out the one that does have a regulatory meaning? And maybe
Registered representative?
That is correct. So that's the only one on this page that is a regulatory term. So let's go on to the next slide. So registered folks are going to be one of two things, either an agent of a broker-dealer or a representative of an investment advisor firm. On a high level, and these are the only firms that we register, there are broker-dealers and there are investment advisors. Broker-dealers conduct transactions in securities, And if you're working with a broker-dealer agent, you're more likely to be paying a commission on a transaction. An investment advisor representative who is associated with an investment advisory firm is going to provide investment advice, typically for a fee, and that fee is often based on a percentage of your assets that they are managing. When an investment advisor enters a trade, they do that through a broker-dealer. With the bigger firms that are out there, you will more often than not find that the firm is both a broker-dealer and an investment advisor, so that they can handle all aspects of the securities business, be basically a full service type firm. And as a result, the individual financial professionals are usually registered as both a broker-dealer agent and an investment advisor representative. We refer to those folks as duly registered. So if you meet somebody for the first time and you're talking about possibly doing business with that person, first thing you want to know is that, well, whether they're registered and in what capacity. If it's someone who is only an investment advisor, they might be a little more limited perhaps. They're going to be that your account will be held by a broker-dealer, your assets will be there, and that's who's going to execute the transactions. Oops, I think we're still back on that.
Yep.
Prior
Sorry, Deb.
slide for a minute, Brooks. Insurance agents, CPAs, attorneys, they can only do what they are licensed for. You could, however, have an insurance agent who is registered to offer securities or investment advice. You could actually have someone who is a CPA who is also a representative of an investment advisor. If someone who is in one of these other capacities is ever offering you a securities product, you would want to be really sure that they are in fact registered to do that. Usually we hear people use the term financial planner quite a bit. That is not a regulatory term whatsoever. Someone could be an insurance agent calling themselves a financial planner. Someone who is registered as an investment advisor could also be describing themselves as a financial planner and providing financial plans. There are professional designations that are out there too. A certified financial planner is somebody who is certified by the Certified Financial Planning Board, and that's a good qualification to have. But that in itself does not give someone the ability to give investment advice. More often than not, they will also be registered as an investment advisor representative. So I hope I'm not thoroughly confusing folks, because it does get a little bit complicated. Let's go.
Yeah, let me interrupt just a quickie. You do have these self-regulated organizations, right? Such as guys who are registered with, they've taken the CFP exam and they're under that organization. And then you've got regulators like you who are, with the government. And so that's a little bit confusing.
It is. And nonetheless, everybody needs to be registered with the state. Individuals are not registered with the SEC, but of course we've got the SEC out there regulating firms. Investment advisory firms are regulated by us if they have 100 million in assets under management or less. And if it's more than 100 million, the SEC regulates them. Broker dealers are regulated by FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. So yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. So we're going to switch gears a little bit on the next slide. As we get older, we all start getting these wonderful invitations in the mail. I know they tapered off during the pandemic, but they seem to be starting up again a little bit. For instance, it might be, if you can see this, personal invitation or a dinner workshop. Oftentimes there's a delicious looking steak on the invitation. There are a number of things though to watch out for. Sometimes these presentations are interesting and provide some good information, but the main purpose, even though they say, oh, we're not going to sell you anything during this presentation, the main purpose is to get an appointment with you down the road, because obviously financial professionals would not be having these events and feeding you dinner if they were not hoping to get something out of it down the road. One thing to watch out for is is the person actually registered to sell securities or give investment advice? They may not be. This may actually be an insurance agent who is able to sell a particular type of annuity. So rather than evaluating your financial needs in total and your objectives, their objective might be just to sell you what they are qualified and licensed to sell. And if all that is like life insurance and annuities, well, then that's what they're going to be trying to convince you you need. They're not going to be looking at your circumstances in total and talking about other types of investments. And there's nothing wrong with just eating and taking off after those events. So what should you do if you're offered some type of investment opportunity and this is somebody maybe you just met? Unfortunately, investment professionals are not all the same. There are some that are less qualified, less reputable. And there are also folks that are not registered at all. So certainly you need to check somebody out before you do any business with them. And know where your money is going. Understand what they are recommending and how it's all going to work. And if possible, it's always a good idea to get a second opinion from somebody you trust. This might be a family member, it might be your accountant or legal advisor if you have one. But be very cautious if someone is suggesting to you that this is, something that is exclusive or secretive. Remember Bernie Madoff? Everybody wanted to get in his funds, and the way he created that demand was to make it seem like something super exclusive. And in reality, it was just a big scam. So, be cautious. There's a really easy way to check people out. This is through FINRA Broker Check. It is a national database. It collects all kinds of information about registered firms and individuals, has background information about their employment, how they're registered, where they're registered, and whether they've had anything that you may want to know about in their background, such as customer complaints, regulatory actions, financial liens. You can get a good sense from somebody's record in terms of whether there's any red flags. For instance, if somebody had 10 customer complaints in their background, that may be a sign that, you may be able to find somebody other than that person to work with. A lot of complaints or even one regulatory action might be a red flag. Well, it would be a red flag. It's easy to find this site. Oh, if you could just go back real quick, Brooks. All you need is the person's name to put in there. You could add the location, but it's enough just to have their name. And if you see the tab for the firm, you can also look up the firm rather than the individual. Every individual has a CRD number. It's a unique number for that person that is used in the system. So you don't have to have it to look somebody up, but if you do, it's helpful. Another way to check somebody out is to give us a call. We're happy to look the person up and let you know what we see in the database. If it's an insurance salesperson, OCI has a similar database, and you can go to the OCI website also. So again, you want to know where your money is going before you hand anything over. And you can hopefully ask questions. If you don't understand something, just keep asking questions, making sure somebody is registered. And if it doesn't seem right, you can walk away. So you want to be especially cautious if you are contacted on an unsolicited basis. And even if someone says, oh, I was referred to you, don't necessarily believe that. Sometimes that's a good way to, I don't know, like a starting point to give somebody a greater comfort level. If someone was truly a referral, they should identify exactly who referred the person to you. And just, watch out if things seem to be too complicated, or if the product seems to be unusually complicated. So, and you can always turn something down. There are different resources if you run into problems or questions. One good place to go is the FINRA helpline for seniors, especially if you have a dispute of any type with a firm. FINRA will help track that down. Certainly we'll try to help as well, but we have found that people have had a lot of luck with the FINRA helpline. AARP, I'm sure familiar with them. They track the scams that are going on. And if you think something sounds like a scam or you want to report it, you can go to the AARP website. We've got, if you notice the time, I got to keep moving along here. We have a couple of real life examples for you to contemplate. Excuse me, the first one, this is Barbara. She's in her mid-60s. She went online. She saw some type of investment, thought it looked really good, and she wanted to invest her money. But before we go to the next slide, what do you think Barbara should do? What's the first thing that she should do? If anybody wants to unmute and jump in, or maybe we'll put Mike on the spot.
You could put me on the spot. I would go to, well, depending on the product, I've had a little experience with it. If it were an annuity, I'd check it out with the insurance commissioner, right? Because annuity guys are insurance agents in disguise. But if it were an investment product, mutual funds, hedge funds, stocks, I would look it up in the FINRA database and see if I can find the registered agent or broker.
Yeah, right. First thing you want to do, check out the salesperson. So she should understand where her money is going and maybe talk with somebody else about it. But sadly, and this is a real life case, Barbara didn't do any of those things. She put money in, $5,000, that's a chunk of change. When she tried to get the money out, she was told, oh, you have to put more money in. And of course, that's a red flag of a scam. Nobody was registered here. We took some action barring the person and the firm, but sadly, she never did get her money back. And if she had just checked for whether the person was registered to begin with, and that's the case oftentimes, if someone had just checked for that registered status, they would not have fallen victim. So let's go to the next example. This is Gregory, and we've created, I think, fake names here, but these are real cases. He's going to stop working, or he was planning to, and he wanted to transfer his 401k into an IRA. Gregory had been working with a tax advisor named Mike for a lot of years, about 10. And Mike said to Greg, well, I can help you out with your money that you want to roll into an IRA. And Greg thought that sounded pretty good. What should he do first, though?
I would check it out to see if Mike is registered, because to help with money, you've got to be registered.
Right. See, Mike has this figured, our Mike has this figured out now. Check the person out, know where your money's going. You always want to be careful if someone's asking you to write a check. If the rep is with a firm, the check should be written to the firm. It should not be written to some entity that you have never heard of and that is not the firm or the custodian.
So like this situation, you know, one of your friends is acting like a big shot and he's driving a Porsche, you know, and he's wearing fancy clothes. And he said, I could help you. You know, you don't have to go and give 3% to that guy over there at the office. You know, I'll do it for whatever, you know, I'll take a piece of the action.
Exactly.
You know, people do that, right?
Oh yeah, it happens. Yeah. So in this case, Gregory decided to invest $70,000, and then, wouldn't you know it, the tax guy passes away. But Gregory had not gotten any statements. He didn't have anything to show that he had made this investment. The tax guy wasn't registered. He just spent the money. You wonder why people do these things, but sadly they do. And it's who knows whether Gregory will get any of his money back? Probably not, because oftentimes, once somebody spends the money, if they take the money, they probably felt they probably didn't have a lot of money to begin with, or they wouldn't have taken it, and then they spend it and it's gone. So even though you know somebody in another capacity, maybe from church or, in this case, a tax person, it does not mean that a proposed investment is legitimate or that someone is registered or qualified to help out with it. So I'm going to turn things over to Joe at this point.
Thanks, Deb. So here we're going to look at some red flags that you can look out for that may indicate that the salesperson doesn't have your best interests at heart. First, they may ask you to write checks payable to an unfamiliar business or yet to them directly. Like Deb said earlier, you want to make sure that that check is going to a credible place. Also, they may ask for information that you're not comfortable sharing, like an account login credentials or passwords to your bank account, your 401k account. They really should not need that information to do their job. That information should be held just for you. Maybe, like Mike said, they go on extravagant vacations or have that fancy car or throw lavish parties. That may indicate that this person is bringing in more money than they would have through other reasonable work. Watch out for them gaining your trust by becoming overly entangled in your personal life. Like maybe they run errands or do yard work or provide transportation to doctor visits. In the moment, this can feel nice. It can also be a way for them to isolate you from your family and friends by becoming your new best friend and someone that you rely on. It's human nature to want to reciprocate these kind deeds, and they might use that human nature to pressure you to give them financial gifts or maybe make them your power of attorney for finances. Some other red flags are, they guarantee that you'll be able to make high returns without any risk. A true securities investment doesn't have any guarantees, but it also shouldn't be like gambling or just buying a lottery ticket. If you're chasing high returns, expect that there will be high level of risk also involved with that. Be extra careful if the salesperson uses high pressure sales techniques or indicates that you need to invest immediately. Investing for the future is a long-term process. There will never be an instance where you can't wait a day or two to invest, say to do your own homework or to ask someone else for their opinion. Connected to that, only invest in what you are comfortable with and understand. If the business model or investment is really confusing or complex, either take the time to become comfortable with it or just move on. The advisor should always be able to explain the investment clearly to you so that you have a full understanding of what's going on. In particular, here are some specific questions that you can ask. How will this investment make money to pay these returns? Or, what fees are you as the promoter going to get? What's your cut of this? What's your commission? Get written information about the investment so you can do your own research. The internet is great. You can do a lot with just a simple Google search. They'll bring up things like lawsuits, orders, or complaints that other people have brought up about that same investment. Another thing you can do is be especially cautious if the salesperson tells you that the investment is a secret and that you can't tell anybody. Like Deb mentioned earlier with Bernie Madoff. This is a very common tactic used by scammers. They want as few people as possible asking questions. They don't want anybody looking into this asking questions like we will. No legitimate investment works like that. If you're unsure, get a second opinion from an accountant or another advisor. And really just trust your gut if you feel that it's too good to be true. All right, let's say that you've already done your homework. You've checked out the salesperson in the firm. You understand the proposed investment and you don't see any red flags. So you go ahead and write that check. Well, your job still isn't over yet. It's really important that you do these three things. One, monitor your investment. So ensure that things are going on as expected. Two, review account statements. And many firms send account statements now by email. And while that can be helpful, I still prefer getting a hard copy in the mail just because they're harder to ignore. And lastly, stay in contact with the advisor. You're paying them to manage your portfolio. Don't feel bad about calling them if you have any questions. That's their job. It's their job to answer your questions. Next slide here. In looking at the statements in particular a little bit more, it's worth reiterating the importance of receiving and reviewing your statements. Make sure that they're actually coming to your house and not being held by the advisor or there's some other third party in there. I imagine many of you balance your checkbooks each month and review your credit card statements for charges that you didn't make, right? Well, you should be doing the same for your brokerage statements as well. Some firms' statements can be really complicated to review. Don't be afraid to ask your financial professional about anything that you don't understand on your statement or to help you understand what's on there a little more clearly. And watch out for trades that you didn't know about. While it's okay when the written IA contract, it's common that IARs are given discretion to make trades on their own. However, brokers rarely have discretionary trades in a brokerage account or an IRA. And watch out for brokers who recommend trades that are so frequent that the account value is diminished. That only serves the purpose of making the agent's commissions add up, right, while your balance goes down. Your investment professional should recommend investments that are in your best interest. So if you see something that is unusually volatile or risky, something like hedge funds, private placements, non-traded REITs, options, or margin trades, ask your representative for an explanation. There shouldn't be anything in there that they can't explain. Now we're going to talk about disputes with registered firms. Sometimes if you have a complaint against your representative, it can be hard to know what to do or where to turn to. Luckily, there are options.
Aging and Disability Resource Center. This is Tiffany. May I help you?
Oh, sounds like someone else is. Okay, I think we're all muted now. The first thing that we always recommend for folks to do is to speak with the branch manager or the person in charge of the branch. Second is to submit a written complaint to the firm and give them a deadline to respond by. Be specific about what has happened and what steps you would like the firm to take going forward to fix the situation. You can always contact us at the Division of Securities if you don't know who the supervisor or the branch manager is, or if you're unfamiliar with how to write a complaint to the firm. Our department will walk you through the whole process. And it's also always possible that you may need to take it further via civil litigation. Many account opening forms for brokerage accounts or investment advisory contracts have arbitration clauses in them that dictate how complaints are escalated. This also can be confusing, but you can always contact us and we'll help you through it. And now I'll hand off the presentation to Brooks to discuss issues in investment fraud.
Good morning. You know, kind of a little bit unlike Joe and Deb, I work in the enforcement section of the Bureau, where we're charged more with going after some of these scammers, most of the time unregistered. So folks that probably aren't looking to be registered in any sort of capacity and are just looking to, unfortunately, take money from good, hardworking folks like yourselves. So I just want to go over a few topics that we're going to go through today. Hopefully this is one you've heard in the news recently, and I apologize for the vulgarity of the term, but it's called a pig butchering scam. The second one would be a promissory note investments or promissory note related investments. And then the third topic we're going to talk about is precious metals. Just to get a quick start off, the term pig butchering is quite vulgar. Again, I apologize. However, the term is being widely used to describe this scam, so we wanted to be consistent with the terms you might hear in the media or your news. They go kind of in a simple little row, kind of like how we got here. We have initial contact. Fraudsters will contact the victim out of the blue. This can be done with, you know, either a wrong text message number, you know, hey Janet, how are you doing? You're not Janet, you're Joe. Or a random telephone call or social media post, something along those lines, some sort of contact. Now build up, the scammer will then essentially build up the pig, or fatten up the pig is the way to call it. In this phase of the scam, the fraudster is attempting to establish a relationship with their victims. Fraudsters will use all sorts of tactics like sharing similar life experiences with you. You know, are you a single parent? Or, you know, I also lost a brother, I lost a sister, or something along those lines. Similar experiences that may mirror your own experiences. So if you give them a little bit of information about yourself, maybe a week later, you're going to hear that bit of information coming from them. So just something to be aware of, keep an eye out, that type of thing. I skipped one. There we go. Next part of the scam will be we call sharpening the knife. After establishing the relationship, fraudsters will bring up an investment offering of some sort, a true can't miss opportunity, if you will, trying to get you involved. You know, hey, we've shared experiences, we've shared stories, or, you know, a bond over the last week, month, 2 months. Now, how about you trust me with your money? And then that's when we get to, unfortunately, the slaughter part. Once the victim decides to go through with the fraudulent offering and sends their money, that is typically when all the communication from the fraudsters will cease. Please do be aware. This is more of a recent development that we've seen in our enforcement side. A few of the cases, the fraudulent offerings have been allowing victims to make one withdrawal. The idea of that being that the victim will then deposit again in a larger amount, and that the scammer can get even a more significant chunk from the victim. So something to be aware of. Some warning signs that you might run into, or you should be aware of, to just related to these pig butchering scams. Any unexpected contacts, like I was talking about, those text messages when you're Joe and you get a text message that says, hey Jan, how you doing? A lot of these have video chats, and in some certain circumstances that the fraudster will not appear on a video chat. They don't want to appear on the video chat. Most of the time it's because they're, you know, maybe using a fictitious picture, so they're not going to match the person on the video chat's most likely not going to match the picture they sent you 2 days ago, something along those lines. Again, like Joe and Deb have talked about, requests for financial information, invitations to invest in specific financial products, unknown or confusing opportunity, unfamiliar trading platforms, exaggerated claims about what you're going to make. Oh, I turned $5,000 into 500,000 in 3 months. No, you didn't. Or a sense of urgency about upcoming news or price increases.
And Brooks, lately, this often involves crypto. as the investment opportunity, right?
Yeah, correct. They have been, the pig butchering scams have been around for a little longer, but it's definitely with the rise of cryptocurrency in the last 3 to 5 years or so. It's definitely been more prevalent with the cryptocurrency exchange or medium, if you will. Yeah. So just a quick little blurb about these. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I just wanted to give you some numbers as to how prevalent this really is. This is 3.31 billion in 2022 just due to investment fraud, and that's only reported losses. And I think the numbers like maybe 1 in 10 get reported. So, you know, extrapolated from there, it's pretty bad. So just be aware of these. These are real life case examples. These are 3 cases I picked from our caseload right now. These were all in the last 5 to 6 months. So case 1, victim approached on a popular dating app, purchased cryptocurrency to trade it the direction of fraudster. He's out at least 22,000. Number 2, victim approached via unsolicited text message, like we were just talking about, purchased cryptocurrency to trade it direction of fraudster, out at least 70. Another victim approached on social media, purchased cryptocurrency to trade it direction of fraudster and lost at least 25,000. So, I mean, right there's a quick $130,000 lost from Wisconsin residents. Yeah, it's a problem. So, unfortunately, we have too many cases of these to pick from. So just don't make yourself a victim of one. If you do have questions, please reach out. We'll talk quickly about some promissory note investments. Promissory notes like a form of debt that a company issues to raise money. It's a legitimate form for companies to raise money. It's the issue is when we start getting into how people promote these types of investments, and you know, if they're just fictitious investments as a whole. So just be aware of these are going on. Investors purchase promissory notes enticed with the promise of high rates, high fixed returns, sometimes upwards 15 to 30%. And again, with all low risk or no risk. In some cases, the fraudsters who may or may not be affiliated with the company persuade independent life insurance agents to sell these promissory notes. Kind of like what Deb was talking about earlier. Make sure these folks that you're talking to, or this person that you're talking to, is licensed to sell what they're selling you. Luring them with commissions of upwards of 20%. I know Joe and I had a case a couple of years ago. We had this exact thing play out almost, where the commission is just pretty much going to the guy who's selling the stuff, and unfortunately, folks like yourself got the short end of the stick. So just be cautious with these things when they're going on. I just wanted to give like one quick case example on a promissory note case. This is a case that we again did in our own office. From 2006 to 2012, I believe his name was Jason Mogler, and I don't remember his partner's first name. I apologize. Several others solicited millions of dollars from victims. They promoted their fraudulent investment schemes through legitimate appearing seminars, magazines, articles, like, you know, invite you to a steak dinner seminar. So just be careful. Offering documents were littered with false statements regarding ownership and the collateral properties, the guaranteed returns, and the feasibility of even these projects even working. They used the investor funds to line their pockets and to pay other investors. Mogler was eventually sentenced to 24 years, 4 months in prison. Yes, that's a good win. Hinkleday was sentenced to 30 years and 5 months in prison. Again, another good win. They were both convicted of conspiracy, wire fraud, mail fraud, the typical Department of Justice stuff. The money was spent on gambling, drugs, strip clubs, the typical stuff, unfortunately. And then finally, but definitely not last, is precious metal scams. These have died down a little bit within the last 6 to 18 months, but are still definitely prevalent out there. So be aware of these going on. These are some different ways that these scams can exist. It can involve gold, silver, platinum, palladium. You pick a metal. There are some precious metals dealers are not authorized or affiliated with the U.S. Mint, so be aware of that when you're talking about that. In certain cases, coins may not even exist that they're selling you. So if you're going to have some sort of depository, make sure some way to verify that those coins actually exist, or that maybe you hold the coins yourself, depending on how you want to do that. In some certain instances, the coins that these companies may sell you will be much lower value than what they're actually selling them to you for. That seems to be the most common. A quick example of that be if I have a gold coin and it's worth $30 and I sell my friend John Wilson over here that gold coin for $60. Well, he doesn't have a $60 gold coin. He has a $30 gold coin that he paid $60 for, and John's actually out $30. So be aware of those types of things going on. Again, brochures and statements might look official, but there might be no actual production or mineral rights. Love to give real life case examples, and this is the case that I had, so I love to give this example. This is Jeffrey Santalan on your screen. He is the owner of Safeguard Metals, who is currently going through litigation for doing exactly what we just described, of selling overpriced precious metals to seniors. Targeted, and he along with our agents and sales agents targeted investors at or near retirement age. They did a lot of advertising through Facebook, Google, and direct, what we would call cold calling, calling you out of the blue. The salespersons in these cases use scripts to try to sell folks like yourselves to purchase precious metals, made up complete false claims about Safeguard's about the company's history, the size of the company, what it was worth, that type of thing. Be aware that it seems to be silver is the one that these companies seem to use, the silver versus gold. And then the markups ranged approximately 64%. So you got to think of making up 64% before you're even making $1 on your investment. It's not great. Like I said, they use scare tactics. They would tell folks on the phone that your retirement funds are going to be frozen, your securities are not insured, the market's going to crash. You know, it's better to put your money in precious metals than it is the stock market. You know, just various other ways to get folks scared and to get to folks purchasing what they want them to purchase. Last year in February, we filed a joint civil action in court, California, along with 27 states, including Wisconsin, which is us, and then with the SEC filed the same day. And then we are still in, unfortunately, ongoing litigation. That never seems to end, unfortunately. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Joe.
So while we never hope or expect things will go wrong, sometimes they unfortunately do. So it's important to know where to turn to if and when the unexpected happens. We've mentioned it a few times already here, but if you have a concern that isn't being addressed by the firm or the salesperson, please reach out to us at the Division of Securities. The phone number listed is staffed by securities examiners like myself, and we're here to help. We really do want to help answer these questions for you and help bring some clarity to these confusing issues.
And if it goes into voicemail, just leave a message and someone will get back to you.
That's right. We are fortunate in Wisconsin to have a number of excellent resources available to us. For instance, every county has an adult protective service office that is set up to handle a range of situations beyond just financial abuse. So they're a great resource. The Aging and Disability Resource Center bills itself as a one-stop shop for older adults, people with disabilities, and their caregivers and families. If you don't know where to start, I really would suggest giving the ADRC a call. They're a wealth of information, and they know this situation, and they know all who to contact for specific instances. And of course, the local police department will also have officers trained in white-collar crime. And additionally, sometimes you need to make a police report for tax reasons or just for your own records as well. On the regulatory side, we've already discussed how complaints regarding investments should be directed to us at the Division of Securities. But again, if you have a complaint that has to do with an insurance product like variable annuities, then you should contact the Office of the Commissioner of Insurance. They're the primary regulator for insurance products. The Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection sure is a mouthful, but they are the agency to go to if you suspect that you've been the victim of identity theft. They're the ones to go to for that. Again, if you're interested in learning more about crypto, investing terms, acronyms, or scams involving precious metals or pig butchering, There are a number of really great websites to visit. First, we'll plug our own. The Division of Securities website is a great resource, especially for finding orders entered into with other bad actors. The North American Securities Administrators Association, or NASA, talks at length about how to spot scams and red flags. They can also point you to other regulators in different states if you need to get in touch with them. FINRA, like Deb said earlier, is the primary regulator for broker-dealers, and they also maintain the securities helpline for seniors. That number can also be a great starting point if you don't know where to start. They have a lot of practice and a lot of history putting people in touch with the right places. And of course, the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission also has a wealth of information on the website, investor.gov.
And it looks like we do have time for questions. We stayed on track time-wise, so we'd like to open it up and see if anybody has a question or something that we didn't cover that they'd like to know about.
Feel free to unmute yourselves, folks, and chime in. It's a great opportunity to get your questions answered.
And hopefully we haven't totally frightened people either.
No, not at all.
Bad stuff going on in the world.
Not at all.
I'll go ahead and ask one. I'm John Wilson. I work as a daily money manager, doing banking and bill paying for older adults. I also do some work as a financial coach, working on my accredited financial counselor designation. So I certainly fall into that unregulated category. I've helped clients in finding investment advisors. And what I found, though, is that it's difficult to find good, reputable advisors for clients that don't have a large portfolio to invest. Many advisors require you to have a minimum investment amount before they'll take you on. So I've directed clients to Fidelity and Vanguard and Schwab that have offerings for smaller investors. I'm wondering if you all have thoughts around that topic for older adults that have smaller investment portfolios but still need to get financial advice. What would you recommend?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I'm aware of firms like you mentioned that want clients that only have a certain amount of money. And while we don't endorse any particular firm, there's one that has a business model that might lend itself to smaller investors. And that would be Edward Jones, because they have a lot of branch offices throughout the state that are located in many of the smaller towns too. So my sense is that they don't turn away the smaller investors because of how they're structured. That being said, even with a well-known firm like Edward Jones, you'd certainly want to check out any particular representative before working with them. Joe, do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, so John, I think your point is well taken, that for folks who don't have a lot of assets to manage, sometimes they don't get the attention that they need. Well, they still need that advice. And so investment advisory firms offer a range of services, and they kind of fall into two main buckets, I think of them as. One would be the asset management side, and then the other would be financial planning. So there are many firms that offer financial planning as a standalone service. So maybe you can pay hourly or a fixed fee for a financial plan. And that can be really helpful for folks who don't have the assets to manage, but are still in need of questions about when do I take Social Security, or how do I handle this estate, things like that. There absolutely are firms that will take on that project separate and apart from the advice on the assets under management. And so there are also some agencies and some different groups that kind of tailor their advice to that financial planning. Yeah, so financial planning is, I think, is probably what I would look at.
Great, thank you.
There is a financial planning association with a local chapter, so I don't know if their website would be helpful.
Maybe as a follow-up to that, when do those financial planners that work in the unregulated space cross the line? Clearly they're not licensed to actually sell specific investments and take your money, but is there certain kind of advice that they're also not licensed to provide, even if they're not involved in the transaction itself?
I think most financial planners are going to be registered or licensed in some capacity. It's just, you'd want to be aware that financial planning in itself is not a regulatory term. But I think if you looked at the person's status, you're going to typically find that they are hopefully registered, and registered in the securities space if that's what you're looking to do.
John, I think
they just won't be registered as a financial planner. They'll be registered as an investment advisor representative or a registered rep of a broker dealer.
And you're also right, John, that there are services that can be provided by folks who are unregistered that have absolute utility and are valuable to those clients, like helping manage bill paying and things like that. But it's when we start thinking about providing advice on securities, like, hey, I really think you should buy XYZ stock, or you should sell, or whatever. That's when it sort of gets into the territory of definitely needing to be registered for.
No, it's listening to the radio, and these advertisements are all over the place for precious metals. Yeah, there you can get King Charles III on a $30 coin, and the suggestion is, boy, that's going to be valuable someday. How is this advertising regulated? Is it regulated at all?
I don't know who regulates the advertising. No, it's hard enough to keep up with who regulates this industry, much less paying attention to a completely new industry. But as for your comments on the precious metals advertisements, yeah, I'm not surprised. A lot of them we've been given. We've accumulated a few over the years that we get sent from victims or investors in precious metals cases, and it's amazing what someone can put on there and then send out to other folks. I'll be honest, I can't believe it myself sometimes.
And just because it's in a big name newspaper or magazine or on the radio,
doesn't give it, yeah,
does not mean that it's legitimate.
No. So do a double check every time. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Put the firm's name in Google. I mean, that's a great start, especially with the precious metal stuff. And if you do start looking into the precious metals side of things, maybe speak with someone who knows what they're talking about. Maybe go to your local coin shop. They can give you a better understanding of maybe what certain things are worth. Because there's a whole section of numismatic, non-numismatic, grading, all sorts of things that go on with precious metals. So just be careful.
Deb, I noticed there's a question in the chat from Ruth Bogert regarding the misuse of the term fiduciary. Do you want to handle that?
Let me look at the chat. Well, that's funny. I'm not seeing the question. Could you just read it, Joe?
Yeah, please discuss the misuse of the term fiduciary.
Okay, well, investment advisors and investment advisor representatives are required to act in a fiduciary capacity. The broker-dealer side of things traditionally did not require a fiduciary duty, but rather it had a suitability standard. Recent changes in the law have imposed a acting in the best interest of the client standard on broker-dealers. So I don't know that that's super different from fiduciary, and the broker-dealer industry for various reasons has resisted being put in a fiduciary capacity. Misuse of the term. If someone says they're a fiduciary, I guess they may or may not be. In strict terms, only investment advisors are required in the securities world are required to act as fiduciaries. And of course, we have fiduciary roles in other places like trustees and attorneys and so on. So I'm not sure. I hope I've sort of answered the question. I'm not understanding what is referenced by the misuse of the term, but feel free to follow up.
Feel free to chime in, Ruth, if you want to ask more questions about that, because it is important. Everybody wants to be thought of as doing the best for the customer, right? But, you know, most stocks are not worth investing in, right? And so it's hard for a broker dealer to be a fiduciary if he's going to sell stocks, because most of what he has to sell isn't worth a darn. So you got to be a little careful with a business like that.
And a fiduciary duty implies more of an ongoing monitoring of the client's account than what you might receive in just a brokerage account.
We have another question from Liz asking, where would one find a list of registered investment professionals in any state? First in Wisconsin, thanks. So we don't manage a list of investment advisors in Wisconsin. So unfortunately, it is going to be a lot of searching on your own. And absolutely, if you have questions about an individual person, we would hope you feel comfortable reaching out to us to see if we had any red flags or anything like that.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of just a general overall list. If there was a list, it would be extremely long and probably more than you'd want to go through anyway.
I mean, in theory, I guess you could put in like Wisconsin as the jurisdiction and broker check, but I think that might break it.
Yeah, I think you have to look up a particular firm or individual. It doesn't give you a.
It doesn't allow you to do it just by the state.
No. We've got a question about companies that come to a local hotel or jewelry store to buy coins, jewelry, artwork from the public. Are they regulated at all? I don't really know if they are or not. Like anything, be cautious.
Would most investment advisors also be registered?
Oops, you just went on mute, Mike.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm just wondering, wouldn't, and maybe this isn't true, but my perception was always that the investment advisors are often, maybe usually, registered representatives. Is that not true? Wouldn't they have at least 6 and 67 registrations, or not so?
You're right. Oftentimes, folks are duly registered as on both the broker-dealer and the investment advisor side. The one time you don't see that quite as much is if it's a smaller investment advisor who's hung out his own shingle. He may simply be an investment advisor rep of his own investment advisor, but then he would have a relationship with a broker dealer to act as custodian for the accounts. But that person is not going to be a registered rep of a broker dealer.
And Bonnie just asked here in a message to me, it says some brokerage firms make a market in what they sell. You know, they are there, you know, they're trading within their own organization. Are there any red flags that would indicate that that's what they're doing rather than putting it on the general investment market?
They should be disclosing that in some way, and, you know, want to watch out for fees, that something isn't being sold more from one firm than another. Here's
And
another.
Karen, yeah, go ahead, Deb, you saw that.
Guys, what does it take to be registered? First, you take qualification exams. There are different ones depending on whether you want to be qualified as a broker-dealer agent or an investment advisor rep. Once you take those exams, you can be associated with a firm. Taking the exams and passing them in themselves will not register you. You must file an application with our Division of Securities and be approved to act in that capacity. We get so many applications that if somebody has a clean record, they can go through automatically. But if they have disclosures, their application will get stopped in the system, and we'll take a look at it to see if we will approve that registration.
Yeah, it's actually really easy to get your 6 and 67, right? It's most nothing. Then you can advertise yourself as an investment manager, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, maybe even that's not a registered term, but it's so easy.
Say someone takes a Series 65
Mhm.
and they do everything they need to get registered as an investment advisor rep, and they, for the firm, the investment advisor firm, they must also file that application. We do review each and every firm application that comes in. So if you have all those approvals from us, then you can hold yourself out as an investment advisor. You have to renew your registration each year. And we have a new requirement that kicked in this year for investment advisor reps. They are required to do continuing education. You would have thought that that requirement already existed, but it did for broker-dealer agents. FINRA requires continuing education. But now on the state side, it is required as well for investment advisor reps. So sometimes you have an individual who now does that continuing education. They do the FINRA continuing education. If they're registered, if they have some other qualification like their CFP, they have to do that continuing education. So sometimes, you know, folks whine a little bit about how much continuing education they have to do, but it's a good thing.
And being registered doesn't mean you're competent, right? I mean,
It does not. It means you've met some basic threshold requirements, but, you know, being registered doesn't mean everybody is equally qualified. There are going to be differences.
and the real scammers like Brooks was talking about, those guys don't even bother to get registered in most cases, right? They're just taking your money. Okay.
And again, there's so many instances where if someone had just checked to see if the person was registered, they could have avoided being a victim of a scam.
And to that question, Deb, the second part of Karen Miller's question was, how do we determine if a person is legitimate or not? You know, with respect to the registration status, there are two great ways to do that. One is in the link that I just posted to the chat, which is brokercheck.finra.org. And that's the site that Deb walked through, that you can put in a person's name and it'll see in what capacity they're registered as an investment advisor representative, a broker dealer agent, or either or both or none. And then the other is to give us a call. So absolutely feel free to give us a call. We are happy to answer these questions if people are registered or not.
As an experiment, if you're working with a financial professional, go ahead and, you know, look them up in broker check, and hopefully you won't have any surprises there.
Yep. Any other questions? Let's finish it off here with the last question. And anyone else?
We'll also be
If-
happy to share these slides with you, Mike. You can make them
Good.
available to folks. So don't feel like you need to scribble down all of our names and contact
Okay.
information.
Yeah, thank you. Send that to me and I'll make it available to everyone here on the group, and that way they have easy access to all of these resources you've made. Thank you so much, Deb, Joe, and Brooks. Really appreciate your expertise and time helping us out today. Deb mentioned that she may be looking for some people to help her with a little project later on. So if you've been doing investing yourself or been involved in managing some of your own money here, be on the lookout for an email from me, because we're going to be trying to put together a little project that Deb and her office are working on.
Yeah, there's
Alrighty.
going to be an in-person event on July 25th with the SEC and some other regulators. And we'll get that circulated and have a registration link. Attendance is limited, so it'll be kind of whoever signs up first if we need to cut it off at some point.
Great, thank you. Okay, everyone, thank you for coming today. Really appreciate it. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.